everyone, and welcome. Today, we're jumping into the world of technology in our schools, but probably not in the way you're thinking. We're going to dig into some really fascinating research from New Zealand that pulls back the curtain on the hidden side of our digital classrooms, online addiction. So let's just start with this question, and let it sink in for a second. What happens when the very tools we've brought in to fix things, to make learning better, actually become the problem themselves? It's a massive question, and it's really the core of everything we're going to unpack today.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the big promise of education tech, all the good stuff. Then we'll get into where it all gets, well, complicated. We're going to define what digital addiction really is, see how the pandemic just poured gasoline on the fire, and then, and this is important, we'll look at actual strategies for finding a balance. And we'll wrap up with the big questions we still need to figure out.
Okay, so first, how did we even get here? Well, it all starts with a spirit of innovation. You've got places like New Zealand that, partly because they're pretty isolated geographically, have always had to be super resourceful. And that mindset, it made them natural early adopters of new tech, especially in their schools. And this wasn't some happy accident. It was a very deliberate, planned strategy. You can literally watch it unfold in their national curriculum over 25 years. I mean, look at this. It kicks off in 1995 with a basic tech curriculum, then gets a big update in 2007, and by 2017, boom, they're adding specific digital-focused areas. The whole goal was shifting from just using technology to becoming truly digitally fluent.
Now, this is a super important distinction to get. It's not all just screen time. The curriculum makes a clear separation between e-learning, which is all about using digital tools for research or working together, and digital technologies, which is a whole subject about creating with those tools. Think of it like this. It's the difference between being a passenger in a car and actually being the driver.
But, and this is where the plot thickens, this very forward-thinking approach creates a huge conflict. The push for digital skills is supposed to make learning better, but it smacks right into the very real problem of digital distraction and dependency. So let's look at both sides of that coin. First, the good stuff. And let's be honest, the benefits are pretty undeniable, which is why everyone jumped on this bandwagon. Loads of research, including a big review in New Zealand, found that having internet at home overwhelmingly leads to good things for students. We're talking more engagement at school, better grades, and even more social opportunities. But that's only one side of the story. Other studies paint a way more complicated picture. They're reporting things like lower grades when phones are in the mix, a major drop in productivity, and, you guessed it, less time spent on the basics like homework and just reading. So the same tool can be both a launchpad and an anchor. And this term perfectly captures how deep this issue goes. It's actually changing how we interact as humans. Have you heard of phubbing? Yeah, it's snubbing someone right in front of you for your phone. The very fact that we needed to invent a word for this and that we all know exactly what it means tells you everything about how these devices are rewiring us. So this is where we need to make a really important shift. We're not just talking about bad habits or getting distracted anymore. No, the conversation has moved into what researchers call problematic internet use, or PIU, and they're now looking at it through the very real framework of addiction. Right, so how do you define an addiction? Well, back in the 90s, a researcher named Mark Griffiths laid out these 6 core components, and they're a fantastic way to understand this. First, you've got salience. That's when the activity just takes over your thoughts. Then, mood modification, that rush or buzz you get. Over time, you build up a tolerance, meaning you need more and more to get that same buzz. If you try to stop, you feel withdrawal, like anxiety or irritability. It starts to cause real conflict in your life, with school, with family. And even if you manage to stop for a while, relapse is always a risk. When online behavior ticks all these boxes, it's way more than just a habit. And just so we're clear, this isn't some fringe theory. We're talking about official recognition from the top. Both the World Health Organization and the American Psychiatric Association, the folks who write the book on mental health diagnoses, now officially recognize gaming disorder as a diagnosable condition. That is a huge deal. It tells us this is being taken very, very seriously. So if digital addiction was sort of a low-simmering issue before 2020, the pandemic came along and cranked the heat all the way up. I mean, the global switch to remote learning wasn't just a small change. It was a massive, uncontrolled experiment that forced everyone online, accelerating our reliance on screens like nothing before. This quote from the research paper, man, it is just so powerful, and it really hits home.
For students and teachers who were already struggling with this, being forced to do everything online, it was like telling someone with a gambling addiction that they have to work in a casino. All of the usual boundaries and support systems, they were just gone, overnight.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's a big one. But what can we actually do about it? Well, the good news is it's not a hopeless situation. The research points to a bunch of really practical strategies, things for the classroom and for us personally, to start trying to find a healthier balance.
So, inside the classroom, the name of the game is being intentional. The idea is to use tech to supplement teaching, not just replace it wholesale. Before grabbing an iPad, teachers can ask a simple question. Does this activity actually need a screen? Turns out you can teach really complex ideas, like computational thinking, with unplugged real-world activities. Or hey, instead of a fancy web tool, why not just brainstorm on a big piece of paper and then take a picture of it? Simple, right? But it works.
And on a personal level, let's be realistic. The goal isn't total abstinence. I mean, we live in the 21st century. The goal is controlled, balanced use. And the approach here is multi-layered. It combines things like professional therapy, like CBT, with personal habits, like doing a digital detox. But it also stresses the huge importance of real-world support from your family, from support groups, and even just getting out and exercising, which can literally help reset your brain's reward system. So, where do we go from here? The research is very clear that we're really just at the beginning of this conversation. As we move forward and design the next generation of classrooms, there are some really urgent, really big questions that we have to answer. First up, we need to get way more specific about the why. What is it exactly about being online that hooks us so deeply? Is it the feeling of connection? Is it the infinite fire hose of information? Is it being anonymous? If we don't understand what's really driving it, it's going to be hard to design healthier digital spaces. And then you've got to take that a step further. How do all those drivers play out in a classroom, a place where you can't just log off? I mean, when using these tools as a requirement to pass your class, the whole dynamic changes, doesn't it? We really need to understand that piece of the puzzle. And that brings us to this final thought. It's the big one. We are telling our kids constantly that being digitally fluent is essential for their future. And it is. But while we're so focused on teaching them that, how do we also teach them the equally critical skill of knowing their own limits? How do we teach them when it's time to put the screen down? That, right there, might be the most important lesson of all.